Hi, Brady. This is Jeff again. About the authoring memory topic, I forgot to say this information in my past, the video that I gave to explain the entire concept of authoring memory and all the references that were done, between 1990, well, the published ones between 1998 and 1999 and 2004. Um, it's the original few unpublished articles before that, unpublished reports or training sessions. I just want to mention a few different use cases where this has been done, because I didn't mention that. I didn't mention the actual use cases or contexts where authoring memory has been done. So it can be used in just a normal writing situation where you're writing and then you're revising and you're revising again and revising again, and this could be for software strings, or it can be for any content, a marketing brochure. It could be done for anything that you write, or even an article or whatever, or a book or whatever. This can be done in just a regular authoring situation, kind of environment or context. However, the places in which it has been used specifically and implemented, because the type of reauthoring, and it's usually called reauthoring in this case, is that there's a whole attempt to try to simplify the language, create a bunch of, to simplify the writing style and create a new writing style that is simplified or has new vocabulary or new sentence structures in order to usually make it for computer generated translation. That's usually the case, but not always. So I'll kind of mention a couple of these in a few minutes. So where this is used a lot, or where this would be really helpful to be able to has been done, or could be most useful. I don't want to say most useful. It can be useful in any case, but where it's really helpful is like any of these controlled authoring, controlled English language authoring. It's called controlled English authoring for just English, or controlled language authoring. And a lot of those, there are a lot of companies that were doing it in the 1990s and 2000s, like Caterpillar was doing it with their Caterpillar Technical English, and General Motors did it with their the Castle writing framework. Boeing did it with their simplified technical English. The European Union at the time called it plain English, and I have another. I think it's called plain English now, but it's called fighting the fog back then. I mean, it's had different names too as well for the European Union, or kind of the Parliament and all these, all the European government bodies. Nortel had one called ASE, and there were lots of these companies that were doing this controlled authoring kind of stuff. And I've made a list of them. And actually, Sharon O'Brien had actually been able to, in her doctoral thesis and a bunch of papers, was able to do mention a lot of the ones that she had actually gotten the rules and compared the rules, and then she made down papers and stuff about it and did her thesis about that. So there's a that was one context, and with the author memory was really helpful is because there was an attempt to take all the legacy content and reauthor parts of it in order to begin to have templates in order to let all the authors then continue using that new style of writing. Um, it was usually to simplify the language to make it less complex, in some cases it was like for Boeing, for the aerospace industries, to only do it all in English, but to actually have a harmonized, standardized way to do it. And in other situations, and there were, like, if you look at the articles, right, at the STC, when I mentioned in the previous session, I mentioned the ones where there was like multilingual. It was needed for multilingual kind of translation, and they wanted to simplify it so that it would translate better through a computer generated translation. So, um, this is one use. That's one use case, and that's even two use cases. One is for English only, and one is for multilingual. Okay, so that's kind of one kind of general use case. Another one that was used, which I mentioned that we did at Carnegie Mellon, was that we adapted the Newswire, so that's at 1998 talk, the LREC 1998 talk with Chris Hogan gave it at Airline 2000, 1998, an expanded lexical coverage. Um, The time period there was 1996 to 1997. Or no, not 1997, 1998. And that was for the, sorry for the background noise, but they're going to have this here, the restaurant here doing this, with the kids here. So this was that was specifically, we were adapting the Newswire. I was simplifying the sentences of the Newswire so that it would be more translatable, because we were creating we were translating the Newswire with different languages too. We did from English, we did Serbo-Croatian, Croatian, Bosnian, whatever you want to call it, the different variants of this, because we had different people from different regions. For Haitian Creole and Korean, with the three languages that we were actually doing the translation into these languages using the Newswire. And I would simplify it only in English, cut it up, make the sentence shorter, and kind of deal with any of the issues up front before I would give it to the teams, to the different teams to translate. So we're kind of doing that at that point in time, and that was kind of a very basic kind of implementation of it. And it would have been able to we've been able to actually track and make the differences, because that would have helped us filter the content, as I said, that we were coming through and looking at it, how to deal with it. Because it was different by the time that I had modified it. It was different than what the source had been. So when we're filtering, you had to take that into consideration, because we didn't want to, because we'd end up getting the same content again, and I'd have to re-edit it again. So we kind of had to think about that too. So that pre-editing stage actually messed up our filter, because so it would and the second time around it would catch it. So I mean, we had to kind of think about that. That was kind of a situation. Then another one that we had was, and I don't think I mentioned in the previous video, but we had actually used the Bible for doing the machine translation system at Carnegie Mellon for the Haitian Creole project, and actually the Korean project, and I think the Serbo-Croatian we have done it so as well. We specifically did the Haitian Creole because we had to kind of refix the spellings, spelling system and stuff in a lot of areas and that. And what we and then I wrote an article about in actually Multilingual Magazine, Multilingual Computing and Technology Magazine at the time. Now it's called Multilingual Magazine. And that goes back to 2002. And I wrote an article about using the Bible as an untapped language database for machine translation. And I kind of explained how to do this. But the cool thing is that you could do it as multiple languages, and you can have multiple translations of the Bible in the different languages. And so this was, what you're doing is you're playing with the thing there is these are not like edited translations of edited translations. These are completely different translations for different purposes of reading. So fluid reading, dynamic translations, literal translations, gloss translations, cultural translations. I mean, there are all these different types of translations for the Bible. And when you do is you get all these different, if you have 10 or 15, let's say 15 different translations of the Bible of different reasons or ways of translating it to get a different approach for the readership. Go read the article to get more details on this. I mean, it'll tell you more. And what happened was that allows you to see the same sentence, let's say the same concept, the same message in a sentence. It's called a verse in the Bible, but you get 15 different ways of writing it the same way. And this gives you 15 different views of saying the same thing. And so this is really interesting, not just grammatically, syntactically, but also semantically underneath it, meaning-wise. And I actually did another paper that even go farther back into 1990. Wow, let's see. I did this in 1990 and 1991. 1990, 1991, when I was doing my master's degree at Portland State, I wrote a paper on the semantic analysis of I think Psalm 23 in the Bible, with 4 or 5 different versions of the Bible, because I want to look at the semantic, because it's really hard to find a book or a chat or some kind of article that is translated in different versions. And so, it's like, the Bible goes this, or, it can be done. There are different versions of the Bible. And so I actually did the semantic analysis, not a syntactic, a semantic analysis with thematic rules of the Bible, of that, I think, Psalm 23. And it's really cool, the kind of different meanings that you get. not radically different, but just a different way of dealing with things. And that I'll do another video on that alone, okay, just to explain that. But the purpose here is to show that you can actually have different versions of the same language, um, of the same text. But here it's for a different purpose of doing it. It's not an edited thing. It's having completely different authored documents, trying to aim at the same concept, and then the translations too. So that had a kind of a very specific reason for having a different type of authoring, and that would be like extreme compared to the controlled language one. It's just really different. So that's kind of interesting. Maybe I'll do maybe just a video on that one alone to kind of explain more detail. Then something I did between March 2007 and October 2008, when I was actually working at TransPerfect, translation.com, as a business development director, I would send out a lot of postal, mail to get customers, to find customers, lead generation, marketing lead generation, and then sales. And I sent out like 80,000 letters in 20 months. Okay, so but I literally had, and that was physical letters. Then I also had emails. Okay, and so I sent it a lot, and I had customized templates. Right, I had templates. I have a master template, and then I have other ones. I've actually, you might think of my resume and CV too, the curriculum vitae. Even before that, I mean, like the whole history. This is like, this goes back to when I was, getting jobs, and back even teaching jobs. I mean, in the 1980s. Okay, but what we all do, and this is nothing, this is how we all kind of do this. I've always created a master version. I don't want to say master. I'm sorry. This whole, we got to be careful with the inclusive vocabulary. I don't know what to call this thing. Kind of a standard version, of my correct me resume, or of an email, or of a letter. And then what I'll do is I'll customize it to a different audience, or for a different sector, industry, or something. And usually you modify it, and then that becomes your new customized your one, which you might customize again. And so you might end up with 10 customized versions of the same document. But depending on what industry it is, a little bit more or something, you want to customize it a little bit to that. And same thing for emails. We all do this. And resumes, boy. I mean, how many custom versions do you have when you have to do things? You modify this, got to modify that. Well, you can actually track all these changes. Okay. So that's another. So I can consider this as customized email templates, or customized letters, or you can think of all kinds of things that you're doing this, regularly. You just don't think about it, but you do. You customize them and create from a kind of standard kind of, and then what you do is you end up changing the master, the standard one again, to kind of re-customize. Okay. And another example that comes out, two other kind of examples I can think of where this comes out regularly are adapted books. So like, I think I actually mentioned this in that article about the Bible too. I may have actually mentioned this because it was an example why you don't have, one of the cases where you don't have certain translations. And I mentioned adult versus children versions of books. So you might have a book, okay, that's been published, but now the publisher wants to make a child's version, a children kind of adapted version of that book. So they're going to cut out stuff or change things or say it differently. That's an example of how it can be modified, and you're going to have changes to that. And you can actually track these different changes. And even in that book, you're going to be writing and editing it and making edited versions of it. So again, the authoring memory can kind of come in handy for doing that. Another one was then the Bible one, there was actually the cultural translation. But go read the Bible one. I'll have to make a specific video just about that one, explain those different kinds of translations, why they work. Because it's really kind of a cool situation. It's really different than most cases. And then another one is kind of this whole people-centered approach to writing. This kind of been, it's been coming up probably, I don't know, in the past 10 years, I don't know, and it's all kind of, we want to rewriting our writing style so we can have like more informal kind of approach to, we want to be focused on the user and talking to the user rather than, than making this kind of more formal technical writing style and something. So that's another case where you're gonna have a difference when you write that style. You're gonna completely mess up all your translation databases, translation memories, because you're writing in a whole different way. So you got the original that you did it, now you have this completely different translation, and it's like, yeah, it kind of depends on when you put this whole people-centered approach into place. If you do this on like existing content, um, of existing content of whatever marketing materials, or technical writing or technical product documentation, something, then you have different writing styles of different versions of the. You've gone to this PCA approach. You're going to have it different from the legacy content. So you like version 1 and 2 of the product was this. Now, hey, version 3, we want to start doing this other style writing. That means you're going to mess up your when you're going to now you've already translated the versions 1 and 2, the products. Now you're doing version 3. You're going to completely mess up your entire translation memory, because it's not going to recognize anymore, and you won't be able to reuse it. So this is where authoring memory comes into play, because you kind of want to be able to map that and do that, and then be able to tweak it so that you know how to deal with your ongoing versions, with the translation memory. So that's kind of another case where it's kind of, would be interesting to have to use. But these are all kind of historical things that have been placed, and I mean, you can think of all kinds of ones. So, I mean, the it's endless the amount of kinds of things that you'd use this for. But I'm just kind of trying to give a few examples of where it's already been done for decades. So it's nothing new. Um, it's just about now. It's about where your content management system is or whatever. So and what kind of thing you're doing, how you're organizing your content and stuff. It's but everyone's kind of doing the same thing too. It's just they can't talk about it. So so there's nothing really new under the sun in that completely. So, but this is hopefully this gives you some a few examples, that I didn't mention in the other video. Thanks.